kaigo. Ana siguye andi yugo indeen iltsa ndero yubulna untloketa.
Reservation officials feared that the medicine man might incite a revolt and sent 85 soldiers and 23 Apache scouts to arrest or kill him. When the soldiers seized the dreamer, a group of angry Apaches surrounded them. Suddenly, a firefight erupted. Within moments, the dreamer had been wounded. Enraged by an attack on a peaceful medicine man, Apache scouts turned their guns on the soldiers. When the shooting was over, 7 cavalrymen, 17 Apaches, and the dreamer were dead.
Dinga hagonul karahi doha eltin vesstenat erahtan disen deho.
The Americans limped back to their fort. The scouts who had mutinied were arrested and several hanged. News of the battle shot across the country. The New York Times claimed that Apaches in Arizona had carried out a massacre as horrible as Custer's last stand. Anxious officials called for reinforcements from New Mexico and California. Soon, San Carlos was swarming with U.S. soldiers. No one felt more endangered than Geronimo.
It didn't make sense to stay in an area with a large group of soldiers who you knew had a history of them trying to kill you.
On September 30th, 1881, accompanied by Ho and 72 Chiricahuas, Geronimo escaped from San Carlos and headed south. It was the beginning of 5 years of bloody Chiricahua resistance, the last Indian war ever fought on United States soil, and the transformation of Geronimo into a legend. Geronimo raced towards the relative safety of Mexico. When he passed near the frontier town of Tombstone, terrified businessmen demanded protection. The town's newly elected mayor was John Clum, the former San Carlos reservation agent. He relished the opportunity of a second chance at his nemesis. He rounded up a posse, including a former sheriff made famous by a recent gunfight in Tombstone, Wyatt Earp. "If we get Geronimo this time," Clum declared, "we'll send him back to the army, nailed up in a long, narrow box, with a paper lily on his chest." For 2 days, the posse pursued Geronimo, but never even caught a glimpse of him. Geronimo headed for the one place Chiricahuas felt safe, a part of Apache territory high in the Sierra Madre that no outsiders had ever penetrated. The Americans called it the Apache Stronghold, but it was much more than that.
What you're really talking about is the whole territory of land or place that a group of people called home, stretched for hundreds and hundreds of miles.
There, Geronimo joined the greatest Apache force assembled since the days of Cochise. They were the only Indians in the entire nation still fighting the American army. In the past 2 decades, one tribe after the next had been defeated. The Kiowa, the Comanche, the Cheyenne had been forced onto reservations. The Lakota had surrendered. Chief Joseph and the Nez Perce had agreed to terms. Only the Chiricahuas were still free. They celebrated with a dance.
Everything that an Apache does is sacred. Even the dancing.
They feel a power and invincibility. They say, well, maybe we have to give up Arizona and New Mexico. Maybe we can't live anymore north of the border. But we can live forever here.
For several months, Geronimo and the Chiricahuas enjoyed a return to their traditional life. The men hunted and raided. The women gathered mezcal, dried beef, and made clothes from plundered Mexican cloth. But Geronimo couldn't stop worrying. He knew that it was becoming increasingly risky to raid local villages, and Mexican troops were gathering in the mountains. And he understood that as long as they lived off the reservation, the American army would be after them too. They needed more people. To get them, Geronimo posed an audacious and controversial plan. In a heated debate, he argued they should return to San Carlos, abduct their own people, 400 Chiricahuas under Chief Loco, and force them to join the resistance.
Geronimo is a brilliant manipulator. He was able to talk people into things that their better judgment told them would not work.
Geronimo was said to be a good talker. That seems to be one of his primary characteristics.
Geronimo was a person that came to some conclusion, and he wanted to do something about it right then, no matter what the situation was, no matter what the cost was.
At dawn on April 19, 1882, Geronimo and a group of armed Chiricahuas slipped onto San Carlos Reservation. They confronted Loco with guns drawn. "Take them all," one of Geronimo's men shouted. "Shoot down anyone who refuses to come with us."
Loco didn't want to leave. He wanted to settle down. A lot of these small group leaders wanted to settle down.
It seems like all the other leaders were trying to make peace for their women and children.
Loco and his band were forced on a harrowing trip to the stronghold. Within sight of the Sierra Madre, they rode into a Mexican ambush. Geronimo's hostages were unarmed, and whole families were slaughtered on the spot. 78 Apaches, mostly women and children, were killed. Many of the survivors blamed Geronimo. "We were filled with gloom and despair," one of them recalled. "What had we done to be treated so cruelly by our own race?"
Geronimo's unwillingness to consider the wishes of Loco and his people points to a certain selfishness on his part.
Cochise would not have done the same thing. Cochise respected the idea that Loco could have chosen for himself.
Geronimo saw it differently. He had added more people to the Chiricahua band, the last living free off the reservation. If he had any regrets, he never spoke of them.
Coyote threw a stone into water. He said, "If this sinks, all that live will die." Coyote knew all along that the stone would sink, for he is the trickster. Because of his stone, man must die. All that men do, Coyote did first.
One spring night in 1883, U.S. soldiers apprehended a young Apache man slipping onto the San Carlos Reservation. His name was Tsoe, but the Americans called him Peaches. They suspected he might have information that would lead them to Geronimo. They put him in chains, suspended him by his arms, and interrogated him. Finally, he broke down and told a remarkable story. Although he wasn't Chiricahua, he said he had been taken by Geronimo with Loco's band. When the group was ambushed by Mexicans, he lost both his wives. For a year, Peaches lived in the stronghold, but he missed his family.
Peaches, we must remember, is not a Chiricahua. He is kept under surveillance in the stronghold because people already think he might be a turncoat.
Bisnas ta aige digo. Doesn't that so I bisnas ta len double tagorist anita. Hazaro yo ajonde bindalta.
Life in the stronghold, Peaches said, was hard. The Chiricahuas moved every few days and were low on food. Yearning to see his mother at San Carlos, Peaches slipped away one night and walked back to the reservation. It was the break Crook needed. Peaches knew where the stronghold was and how to get there. He could lead the U.S. Army to Geronimo. 6 weeks later, Geronimo was in Chihuahua, Mexico, when he had a premonition.